Welcome back sa GameGrace channel at ngayong araw na ito, magre-react ulit ako sa gawa ng Wansee Entertainment na horror stories animation. So bago ang lahat, nais ko munang i-shoutout si Enrico Adonay, si Kay Ravena at si Julieta Riato. Salamat po sa pagsuporta sa GameGrace channel, tuloy-tuloy lang po ang panonood at sana ma-enjoy nyo ang video na to. The Woman in the Motel.
It was one night. I was drinking out with my two friends when we left the bar after drinking and chattering for a long time. The last bus had left already. Well, I guess we have to stay a night somewhere, one of my friends told me, and we had no choice but to stop at the motel and sleep together. We lay side by side in bed, and it was about 2 hours after that everyone became quiet. The one who was sleeping in the middle suddenly woke me up with a frightened face. "Hey, let's get out of here right now," she said. "What? We just lied down," I grumbled. But she said this again and again in haste. "Please, let's go. I'll tell you the reason later. If you want to stay here, then I'll leave alone."
Gusto niyang gisingin yung mga kasama niya para umalis? Ano kayang dahilan? Palagay ko meron siyang nakitang mali o kakaiba doon sa room sa motel na tinutuluyan nila kaya nais niyang gisingin yung kasama niya at umalis muna doon.
I felt something uneasy about her reaction, so I woke up and shook another friend's shoulder lying next to me. But he didn't wake up no matter how many times I woke him up. Since we were all drunk and couldn't communicate properly with each other, I finally decided to go back with her first, leaving him in the motel. While I was just killing my time at a convenience store nearby until the time of the first bus, my cell phone suddenly rang. It was a phone call from him who was at the motel. Wasn't he sleeping? Thinking like that, I answered the phone and he screamed at once. "Why do you guys leave me alone in that room?" "Oh no, he must have seen it too," she muttered blankly. Later, my friend said that they saw something in the room. As one of my friends felt thirsty during sleeping, she woke up and went to the refrigerator to get some water. And at that moment, a woman with long hair suddenly appeared from the ceiling, hanging upside down. Her face was covered with blood. She heard a voice from her that seemed to appeal to something, but she couldn't understand what it meant. Her body was so stiff that she couldn't move, as if she had been paralyzed. However, the moment she turned her eyes, the woman disappeared and she was finally able to move again. Early that day, I joined with my boyfriend and went home right away, but I couldn't get rid of my uncomfortable feeling. And I couldn't get over it until the next day around noon.
Grabe! Ayoko ng ganyan. Pero sa kabilang banda, kahit sino naman yata makakita ng ganun, di talaga makakakilos o makakapagsalita agad-agad eh. Kumbaga, masyasyak muna siya eh. Maglalag yung pag-iisip mo eh. Dahil dun sa nakita mo na babae.
So we ended up heading back to the motel to complain to the custodian. However, the police and police cars were crowded around the hotel when we got there. We found the custodian in front of the hotel entrance and approached him. "What's going on here? Anyway, I'd like to tell you that we are very upset and unpleasant that we'd seen something here yesterday." While I was explaining about this, his gloomy face was slowly contorted, and he slowly opened his mouth when I finished talking. "There was a woman who was killed last night in another room after being hit on the head by a baseball bat. The room where she died was the one right above where we were asleep yesterday. My friend saw a woman's ghost in the ceiling almost at the same time as the woman was killed." The moment we heard the story, we got goosebumps and came back home hurriedly. The moment she died, she might have wanted to show up to ask us for help desperately.
Grabe! At the same time na nakita nung babae yung nakabaliktad na babae na duguan yung muka, is meron din palang nangyaring krimen doon sa taas nung room nila. Kaya pala parang may kakaiba doon sa sa nakita niya. Kumbaga hindi siya talaga nananakot, kundi siguro parang humihingi ng tulong.
To this day.
Grabe. Ayoko ng ganyan.
My name is Caitlin.
Okay, next.
This incident happened when I was 14 years old, and I will never forget this memory. One day, I was at home alone at my house. My mom was still at the office late at night, and my two siblings were at my grandparents' house, which was kind of far away from my home. At first, I was just enjoying my time alone, watching Netflix and doing some fun stuff. However, after a while, I got pretty bored, so I decided to invite some of my friends over. I asked my mom for permission and then called my friends to invite them over.
Tama, tandaan ninyo kung mag-i-invite kayo ng mga kaibigan ninyo sa bahay ninyo, dapat ipagpaalam nyo muna sa magulang ninyo. Ask permission at kung payagan kayo, edi go!
A few moments later, while I was waiting for them, I heard a loud
Oops.
bang upstairs. I was sure that there was no one else upstairs. So I stood up and looked up the stairs with an anxious look on my face. When I was near the stairs, I could see that one of my dolls had fallen. I picked it up, and when I straightened my back, something caught my attention. A little girl was standing upstairs. Well, I could feel that she was staring at me, even though I couldn't see her face clearly due to the darkness. I was terrified, and then someone rang the doorbell. I ran to see who it was, and luckily, my friends had arrived. Thank God, it was a moment of relief that my friends came over at the right time.
Yan yung mga points sa buhay mo na mapapabuntong hininga ka na lang na, ay, buti na lang.
Soon, I got my mind off of the girl I saw. We sat down in the living room and had fun talking with each other. An hour later, one of my friends suggested that we should take some pictures together, so we gathered around one another. We took several selfies while laughing and chatting. Later, as we scrolled through the pictures, we found something. There was a little girl standing behind our couch.
Whew! Grabe! Ayoko ng ganyan. Pero kung sa'yo mangyari tong ganito, yung nag-picture-picture lang kayo, tapos nag-groupies kayo, masaya kayo, tapos bigla na lang pag nireview nyo yung mga photo, may makikita kayo na wala dapat dun. Ano kaya magiging reaction ninyo? Ako, masyasyak ako. Lalo na kung gantong makikita ako. Parang walang muka eh.
What made us even more terrified was the fact that she had no face.
Oh.
I mean, her face was just an empty darkness. No eyes, no nose, and no mouth. Being terrified, I told Cassie to delete that picture right away. However, she said that something was wrong with her cell phone. I snatched the phone out of her hands and tried to delete it. But no matter what we tried, we couldn't delete the picture. Then we heard loud thumps. It sounded like someone's footsteps were coming from upstairs, and our light was flickering on and off at the same time. We thought that we couldn't stay inside anymore, so we rushed outside in a hurry. One of my friends, Christina, suddenly pointed at my bedroom window and said that there was someone in there. I raised my eyes up and followed her finger, and there she was. It was the same faceless girl we had seen in the picture. My friends and I screamed. I called my mom and explained everything. My mom couldn't believe what I told her, so she made me calm down and said that she would be home in 5 minutes. After she arrived home, she searched the entire house, but she couldn't find any trace of the girl. I hoped that it was just our imaginations. However, we soon decided to move out of the house because I kept seeing the girl after that incident.
Napaka-creepy nun habang nagsisipilyo ka, may makikita ka sa gilid na ganyan. Kahit nasabihin mo pang gaano ka katapang eh. Matatakot ka eh.
We finally moved, and from then on, my mom never wanted me to be home alone, so I always stayed with my siblings. I still have no clue why the girl haunted me, but I think it was because she wanted us to get out of the house.
Grabe.
Well, I'm just glad that I don't see that girl in my new house.
Yes. Number 3.
When I was in high school, I was crazy about a boy band and used to stay up late at night watching their videos. Because of this, I used to fall asleep at around 3 or 4 a.m.
Ops, tandaan ninyo. Umaabot ng 3 to 4 a.m., masyado ng puyat yun, masama sa katawan, nakakababa ng resistensya, at lalong-lalo na kung matatakutin ka, wag na wag magpupuyat.
The town I lived in was sort of a new city under construction, so it was really quiet and there was no one outside during that time. One night, it was around 3 a.m., I suddenly heard a woman singing outside. It was an old song, and the strange thing was that the woman was singing just one part of the song over and over again. She didn't move on to the next section. She would just start singing, pause for a minute, and then continued singing again. Out of curiosity, I opened the window and was about to sing the next verse of the song to surprise her.
Isipin mo na lang, 3 to 4 a.m. may maririnig kang kumakanta ng ganun. Kahit na anong klaseng kanta pa yan, bubuksan mo pa yung bintana mo para sumabay sa pagkanta, dugtungan yung pagkanta. May mali na dun, boy, may mali na dun. Dapat nahalata mo na ang red flag. Pag ganun, syempre, pabayaan mo na lang. Kagaya nito, baka magaya ka nito. Tinama ah.
However, before that, I sent a text message to my friend. Hey, someone is singing outside and keeps repeating the same part. LOL, should I sing along with her? Not long after, my friend responded, and then I had to shut the window quietly because I was terrified. The text said, "Don't do that. That's a ghost. When ghosts find someone to harm, they first sing and then
Ooh.
wait for the person to sing along."
Ngayon alam mo na. Magsing-along ka na lang mag-isa mo. True Old Building Horror Story Animated.
One evening, I was looking for an internet cafe because I needed
Nice, lalaking-lalaki yung boses. Ito yung narrator na laging nababansagang when I was a little girl. Kasi minsan nagna-narrate siya ng story sa perspective ng little girl, ng maliit na bata, pero gantong boses ang ang gamit niya. Kaya sikat to eh.
to send a few emails. I spotted one in an old building.
Uy, Korean.
The sign said it was on the 6th floor. When I walked through the entrance, there was a dark hallway that led to a small elevator. I pressed the call button, and when the doors opened, I stepped inside. In a lot of Asian countries, many buildings do not have a 4th floor. The number 4 is considered bad luck because the word 4 sounds almost the same as the word for death. When it stopped and the doors opened, I was about to step out when I realized that something was wrong. The hallway was in total darkness. By the light emanting from the elevator, I could make out a random piece of furniture covered with white cloth. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. I thought I might have gotten off on the wrong floor, so I checked the buttons, but none of them were lit up. There was nothing to indicate which floor I was on. Just then, I noticed something moving at the end of the darkened hallway. I couldn't quite make out what it was, but it looked like a person dressed in some type of gown. The figure was moving slowly down the hallway towards the elevator. It creeped me out, and in a panic, I started pressing the closed door button. All of a sudden, the light in the elevator flickered and turned off. I was plunged into the pitch darkness. I was so freaked out I almost wet myself. Just as I was about to lose it completely, the lights flickered back on. The doors closed. The elevator jolted back to life and began to ascend again. I breathed a sigh of relief. When the doors opened this time, I was at the internet cafe. I went over to the counter and told the girl who worked there and what had happened. As she listened, her face grew pale. She said that some of the customers and a few of her co-workers had experienced the same thing. She had never experienced anything herself, but she told me about the history of the building. Apparently, the 4th floor had been a hair salon at one time. It was prospering and doing pretty good until one of the women who worked there killed herself in the salon. Nobody knew the reason why. The salon continued to operate, but they were plagued by weird and inexplainable events. Sometimes when customers were having their hair washed, the water would turn as red as blood. Other people claimed that when they looked in the mirror, they would catch glimpses of a ghostly figure standing behind them. When they turned around, there would be no one there. Because of these events, the salon developed a bad reputation and began to lose customers. Eventually, they were forced to close down. The building's owner tried to rent the fourth floor out to other businesses, but when they found out what had happened, nobody would take it. Finally, the owner reduced the price to nearly nothing.
Kahit sino yata kung businessman ka, tas makita mo yung nangyayari o kaya malaman mo yung history dun sa lugar na rerentahan mo, talagang ang mapapa-atras ka kahit gaano kababa yung renta yung presyo.
And it was rented by a businessman who planned to open a stationery supply store. However, when they tried to do some renovations on the floor, there was a series of mysterious accidents. The workmen's tools would sometimes disappear, only to be found in strange places. A large mirror suddenly shattered when nobody was near it, and the workman had his hand crushed when the elevator closed unexpectedly. Eventually, the workmen were so spooked that...
Whew! Doon pa lang sa animation, dama mo na yung sakit Maipit ka ng elevator. Grabe. Ayoko ng ganyan.
They refused to continue. The building's owner gave up trying to rent the fourth floor out and just shut it down. He had the buttons in the elevator replaced, and it was reprogrammed that nobody could go on the fourth floor. At least that's what's supposed to happen. For some reason, when people took the elevator, it would sometimes stop on the fourth floor, and when the doors opened, some people would see a figure coming toward them in the darkness. I honestly still don't know what that was.
Ibig sabihin, nagmamalfunction siya o parang namimili lang yung nagpapakita kung kailan titigil dun sa fourth floor. So, hindi lahat nakaka-experience ng ganun.
I had a hobby of capturing some ghost stories that I found on the internet and putting them one by one in my cell phone's album. Then one night, I suddenly had a nightmare. I couldn't move my body at all, and at the same time, something caught my eyes. It was a female ghost sitting at my bedside. She was muttering something while holding my cell phone. And when I looked more closely, I could see that she was watching those scary stories in my phone's album that I had captured.
Grabe. Naiisip ko yung sarili ko, may mga ganyan ako sa cellphone Ang creepy, nanunood din sila? Nanunood din? Kakaibang trip yun
Swiping her finger on the screen quickly. This is funny. This is funny. And this is very funny. This is funny.
This is funny. Para sa kanya, funny yung nakikita niya. Siguro kasi akala niya, yung mga kauri niya is sumisikat na talaga dahil sa mga ganong uri ng video. Kaya para sa kanya, it's funny. Okay, next, the post-in note.
About a few years ago, I had a roommate when I was living in the dormitory. She was a pretty famous person in our major class and was known as someone who could see ghosts. Anyway, I was in the middle of a test period, and there were lots of post-it notes around my desk, which I put to memorize what I had studied. Then one day, my roommate looked at my desk and suddenly told me to take off all the post-it notes right away. Wondering why, I asked what was wrong with it, and she replied, saying this: I woke up for a moment in the morning a few days ago, and there was a woman sitting in front of your desk, and she was reading all of the post-it notes you wrote. Nothing could have been more creepier than what she told me.
Oo naman, yes, creepy talaga yun. Doon pala sa pagkakaalam, talagang nakasubsob yung mukha doon, binabasa O baka naman nag-aaral lang magbasa, kaya ganon. Well, syempre, kahit sino naman mag-freak out pag nalaman yung ganon, tanggalin mo na lang.
After that, I no longer put anything on my desk.
Good.
Never.
When I was a young kid, we had moved to another house once. One afternoon during the weekend, my dad asked me to go to church with him. However, being a little kid at that time, I was tired of going to church, sitting inside and just praying like that. So I refused, and he soon gave up, and finally, I ended up staying home alone on the weekend. I suddenly felt thirsty while I was enjoying my alone time watching TV. It was about 2 p.m. and I woke up and headed for the kitchen. Then something strange next to the refrigerator caught my eye.
Oops.
It looked like a black silhouette, like a person with short hair and a long skirt.
Yari ka boy, hindi ka kasi sumama sa pagsisimba eh. Ayan, nangyari sa'yo, makulit ka kasi.
That moment I could feel my whole muscle got flinched and strained. Shoot, whatever. I'm not here to drink water. I'm just here to get some tissue. Being scared, I gave up getting some water out of the refrigerator and then went straight to the bathroom. I grabbed the toilet paper and began cleaning the place around the TV for no reason. I was really terrified at that time though. I kept trying not to look at it, but then I realized something more frightening. The head of the silhouette was moving in the same direction that I was moving. Like it was literally watching me. I couldn't stay here anymore, so I ran out of the house. As soon as the front door closed, I ran down to the playground, sat there and waited for hours until my dad finally came back. After that day, I remember my dad started to chant the Buddhist scriptures all night long, floating a bowl of water on a small table. In the end, we eventually moved to another place. Me and my dad were talking about a ghost story when he started telling me something about the house we had lived in before. While we were living in the house, my dad started to dream very often. One day, he had a dream that a woman was cutting something in our kitchen. When he got closer, he noticed that she was cutting hair continuously. Another day, he heard the sound of chopping something damp, like meat. When he got closer, he saw my body was crumpled in the sink and only my face was on the cutting board.
Ano ba yan? Dila ba niya yun? Hinila? Hinihiwa? Dilot na dilot yung mata oh. Ano ginagawang sisig?
And she had taken my tongue out and was finally chopping it with a big knife. My dad was able to see her face for the first time in his dream. Her eyes were purely red, and she kept smiling at him when her mouth almost ripped, and she never stopped using the knife. He also said that the woman had short bobbed hair and was wearing a long skirt. I think it was the same day that I saw a woman's silhouette in the kitchen. Since then, Dad has visited the church, asking the pastor for help. He even visited the temple to get a recording tape of the Buddhist scripture from the chief priest and prayed all night, but it was all useless. So we eventually moved out again soon. And thankfully, my dad no longer had the dream anymore, and I didn't see the shadow in our new house.
Grabe yun, buti tinigilan sila sa bandang dulo. Hindi na sila sinundan nung lumipat na sila ng bahay. Hindi magandang experience yun, hindi lang yung bata ang nakakita, kundi pala pati yung tatay, kahit sa panaginip na andun din. Grabe. Nakakapangilabot yun. Please support and subscribe GameGrace channel at nagko-cover ako ng iba't ibang klaseng laro. At nagko-cover din po ako at gumagawa ng reaction video at sana po masuportahan niyo po ako na mag-grow ang GameGrace channel. Maraming salamat po!